any given day.
Thank you all for joining us today. To our sponsor for today's podcast, Safe Haven Defense, preserving property, protecting lives, providing peace of mind. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Season 3 of the Centurion's Path podcast. It's been a little bit of time since we've all gotten together, Mike and AJ, to have a conversation, and we got to get back to it because we've been kind of busy and got lazy in making sure that we're staying up for all of our listeners and viewers out there. So good to see you guys. Haven't seen you in a while. Touch makes me happy to see you.
It's been a blur. I wish I had the regular touches that AJ gets.
Right,
going back and forth, doing the conferences and spending that time together. But we're outside of the holiday season, so I'm looking forward to the next opportunity for sure.
Well, we'll be back in Colorado in April, and AJ and I are doing a Colorado Healing Fund event together. So we'll be giving you a call because we need to have dinner when I'm back in Colorado again.
Well, I think it was January. AJ and I had to go to a hockey game alone without son. As you can see, I'm in short sleeves. I'm branded. It's like 60 degrees here. It's insane. So bring your sunblock.
AJ, you got a new puppy.
I got a new puppy. I guess this is a good time to introduce him to everybody. Let me grab him because he's right here behind you.
Let's see. I'm excited.
Everybody.
Yes. This is Zuko. He's 12 weeks old. Pretty rambunctious little dude. Unfortunately, a few weeks ago, I had to put my older lab down. And me being me, of the 58 years I've been on this earth, I think I've been without a dog 19 days, and that's not long. And so, I didn't wait at all. Contacted a breeder that I knew and thought things were going to work out great. He's like, hey, I got a litter. I said, I'm looking for a yellow male. He's like, I got one. I'm like, great, I'll be there in 2 hours, because he was down kind of in the Springs area. And he's like, shit, AJ, I moved. I'm in North Dakota. So that's your stomping grounds, John.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I won't be there in 2 hours. The next day was on a flight, met him in New Salem.
Yep.
And the long, drive back with a puppy, stopping every 2 hours. But
It's a long drive with a puppy.
So that's him. He's growing, and he's in his terrorist stage right now, but just happy to have him. So yeah, and I said I've been busy as heck, and I feel bad that we haven't had time to be able to get together and do one of these, but life gets in the way. Hopefully we can get right back on track and start doing them at the tempo we were doing them before.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that said, because we could probably just sit here and chat and catch up for the next hour, I'd like to kind of introduce our guests that we have. This is Jennifer and Ashlee, and I had the opportunity of meeting Jennifer's father at the FBI National Academy in Baltimore, where Madeline and I were speaking, doing our Dark Nights of the Soul presentations. And took us a while to kind of get together, have conversations. And I would say maybe a month ago or so, Madeline and I were on their podcast, When to Call His Home, and really enjoyed that. And so invited them here. So welcome to our podcast. And we'll have hopefully a lighthearted, and maybe try and keep it lighthearted. We got Mike on now, right? He's kind of the comic relief for us. But have a conversation. So why don't you guys introduce yourself to our guests, and then we'll kind of get on down the road.
Yeah, so I'm Jennifer Woosley Saylor. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and AJ shared, my dad is a retired police officer and was really honored to get to sit through the presentation in Baltimore, and was like, you got to connect with them. You got to connect with them. And he possibly harassed y'all and got your email addresses, and we were so excited to have you on the show. So I'm a counselor, a therapist by trade, cop's kid by birthright, and Ashlee and I started the podcast, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Ashlee, if you want to share about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Dr. Ashlee Gethner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am a child of a first responder as well. So my dad did 29 years law enforcement, and he's now retired. And then I'm from Illinois, live in Wisconsin, but I do a ton with first responders. I have my own private practice, and then I'm also embedded into quite a few different departments up here, and just work really hard to combat mental health with our first responders. So that's about me. And Jennifer and I, we've been on this journey now of podcasting and trying to really connect on what it's like to be a child of a first responder. But it's just an honor, and I'm so thankful to be on today. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you for accepting our invitation for sure.
How long have you been podcasting?
Oh gosh. I guess we're like 2 years. Like what is time? Yes.
And it's when the call hits home?
When the call hits home, which was just like a brainstorming moment, and Ashley had came up with that name. It was beautiful. But Ashley and I met in a conference where we both were serving as mental health providers for first responders, and we happened to put our chairs next to each other and just kind of chatting. When you're in conferences, I'm sure you guys have done this, where you just meet people, and I think through that kind of recognize with our training and clinical experience as therapists, but also this experience of like, hey, was your childhood kind of like this? And yeah, and this just kind of place that when you're growing up in a household of first responding, like, it's your normal, it's totally what it is. And then you get a little older and like, like my neighbor's parents really aren't like that either. And it was interesting us getting to kind of talk and from our experience say like, hey, there might be something here. And you know Ashley has the doctorate, the PhD. She's the smart one, and she had like, hey, what if we like look exploring writing books and things like that. And I hope you guys aren't insulted by this. I know you guys are very well read, but I'm like, first responders sitting like have some free time, downtime, which isn't always filled with reading. So I was like, I'm a big podcaster. I love podcasts. And I was like, what if we started a podcast? And so that's kind of like, I guess, our little bit like origin story of where the podcast came from. And I have been shocked in terms of the response. I tease all the time. I was like, I just assumed our dads were going to listen and that would be it. But from that, like we've had people reach out to want to be on the show in terms of like their experiences. One thing I will say in working with first responders, how much dispatch just kind of missed, and like we've had opportunities to bring them on and say like, hey, you're a part of the first responding world as well. And so yeah, that's a little bit things that have been surprised on this journey.
That's fantastic. It's very cool. And you're giving voice to those that don't have voice.
Yes.
Absolutely. I would say that I probably forced her to talk to me at this conference because I'm very outgoing like that. So I will plop myself down and make people talk to me. And then it was really cool. It was really validating actually to meet somebody else who felt the same way. Like she said, you grow up with it, but you don't really recognize how different you are necessarily until you get older or you start talking to your friends or you realize it's different. And so it was really validating. And it was something that it encouraged me to keep like researching because she's not wrong. I am a nerd. I did say we should write a book. To definite well, that's what I do, right? So I research and I write in my dissertation. Ugh, but I was like, hey, we gotta do something. Like if we're feeling this way, there's gotta be other children of first responders who feel the same way. But just to be able to connect and say, oh, that's actually normal for us. It felt really good, honestly. So that is how this all developed. And then yeah, I never thought that we would be podcasting myself specifically, but here we are. We're just doing it.
Well, that's pretty cool. That's kind of the road we took as well, and here we are. And I think that it might just be us three to listen to ours. So that's what it is, right? It's
Take yourselves laugh.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if my kids are listening or watching it. I mean, it's just like a day on the couch with dad. So, I mean, why would I join with AJ and John? They all say the same things.
It is such a unique thing, though, when we start to think about our kids, right, in going through this profession. And I will echo what John and Mike both said. Probably did it wrong more ways than I ever did it right. Every now and then you had a nugget that's like, oh, that was good. But it's a difficult thing on sharing information, sharing your life, sharing what's going on, but still protecting them and wanting them to still have their innocence about them. And it's an arduous task, I think, at times.
I think
So
parenting is the hardest job there will ever be. And I think to say you're walking a tightrope as a first responder is an understatement, right? Like it is such a balance of what you share, what you don't share, what you're even trying to process individually. It is really, really hard. But AJ, I've met your daughter. Job well done. Like I don't know that you've made any
will
mistake
share it.
there.
I will share that I wish I had this week in particular, I wish I had made my daughter, I don't know what's the right word, more skeptical of the world. I wish I had made her, or created, instead of trying to protect her, I wish I had made her much more conscious of threats. She's in Puerto Vallarta right now.
Oh,
She arrived on Saturday. This thing kicks off on Sunday. I'm like, how am I going to get AJ and Mike down there with me to rescue her? Your fiance, how are we going to fight through cartels? And, I lose contact for about 14 hours with her. And I'm not happy at this point. And I'm thinking, why didn't I make her more paranoid? Because she sends me a picture. Dad, we're sheltering in place on the beach. We have drinks. Like, this is not sheltering in place. People are dying around you. People are being blown up. You need to really shelter in place. And she's like, it's fine. There's nobody on the beach. Well, yeah, because they're all in hiding where you should be. So I'm really kicking myself for now for not giving her a little more trauma.
John, she has plenty of trauma.
She's very well rounded.
Maybe a little more situational awareness, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, my heart dropped when you told me she was down there. And
I thought it was terrifying.
yeah.
And then I look back a few years ago on October 7th, my sister's stuck in Israel when the attack is happening. And I'm thinking, what in my family have they not learned from me? They should be more paranoid about where they go.
Yeah, but you won't even leave the country, John. So
Well, that's because I know the threat out there.
it's like pulling teeth for me to take you to Canada. It's like, come on.
Hey, those Canadians are vicious.
They're getting that way.
Speaking of Canada and kind of along the same topic, I was just there last week in Prince George, did a critical decision-making course for their ERT team, and that's what they call their SWAT team, emergency response team. They don't call it SWAT. And the course had been scheduled for quite some time, but it just so happens that detachment in Prince George were the guys that responded to the Tumbler Ridge shooting that took place the week prior. And they got on a Black Hawk because, it was so remote. They got on a Black Hawk to get to that location. And of course, then John calls me and the day after, and I'm expecting he's going to cancel, which would make total sense with me. And he's like, "No, AJ, I think we need you up here more now than ever." But we had this conversation with, to a person. What do I share with my family? What do I do? And I don't always have the best advice, but the kind of the way that I raised my daughters is, you try and fill in the blanks for them without compromising their innocence, because they're going to fill in the blanks themselves, and that's always worse. But each with that pained them more, I think, than the incident. And the incident was horrific. If you ever get a chance to get kind of a briefing on that, horrific incident. But each one of those operators up there, that's what they were struggling with the most is how do I calm the waters at home? How do I, let them know that the world is uncertain, but it's not necessarily scary, and then prepare them. Each one of them's like, I don't want to let my kid go to school again, which is reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah, those effects. So you can imagine it was a heavy week. I wanted it to be a little bit more lighthearted, but it was a heavy week. But what a true group of professionals up there. And my heart is with them as they kind of walk this path, because we all know it's a long road to walk down.
Yeah. Well, and I love that they wanted to continue on. I think sometimes those things happen and, we just pause and freeze everything and that there's still good things that can come from like, hey, let's keep together and stay the course in those things and that you were able to offer them that support. Um, one thing that I appreciate about Ashley and I were of different generations. I won't tell you who's the older one, who's the younger one. And you don't have to guess. Please don't guess this. But I share a story. Our listeners have heard this many times, but my dad was uh, first to respond to Louisville's first mass shooting. And I was in first grade at the time. And um, on the bus on the way to school, I noticed in first grade that the radio that the bus has, they all have CB radios that they're talking on, that there was something happening. And, that was it. I mean, I'm in first grade. I just noticed there's something different. Nothing's told to me when I get home, all these things happen down the road. And I find out about this story. Obviously, it makes the news, different things. And, my dad, I had to probably been in middle school when he kind of shared, "Hey, this is what happened. This was my response," and things. And I always share with people when I give a presentation about like, in 1989, I'm in first grade. There's not social media and there's not these things. And I have awareness that there's something that's happened differently in my community. And if a first grader has that awareness, if in the last century, like obviously our kids today have way more abilities to get this information. And to your point, like kids will fill in the blank and they fill in the blank with the worst, scariest thing ever. And who children trust the most is their parents. And how do we have these conversations that are extremely hard? Um, Age appropriate, obviously. Like in first grade, I don't know that I need to hear every bloody detail of what happened. Um, but there is information that is important to share with our families, and our spouses too. It's not just kids. Obviously, Ashley and I are children, but we recognize the importance of spouses as well and those dynamics and having that information and how that information is so important and powerful. I also come from an approach too of just being very proactive. Like you don't have to wait for the crisis to have a crisis response. Like, what are we doing when things are calm, when we're having just a regular day to say, hey, I'm going to reassure you if something does bad, this is how we're going to handle it as a family. And so that's always something that, again, our listeners have heard. Ashley's heard a million times that story, but I do think it's important that we're having these conversations with our family and exploring how that works for your family.
Yeah, and I think you hit on the reassurance piece, right? Like even if we're younger, like you said, you mentioned, you could feel it, like you knew something was off, right? And so it's really more of that reassurance, even as that parent. Like as kids, we want to make sure you're okay. We're always gonna have wanting our parents to be okay, right? And so I like the reassurance piece. But also when I do a big presentation, it's kind of gone much bigger than I anticipated, of what it was like for me personally to be a child of a first responder. And I always say like that communication, that age appropriate communication is truly, it can really change a lot for the family. And I think my dad, I'll be open about that. Like he kind of struggled with that. He wasn't one to bring it home and talk. And so I think had he had done that when I was younger, there would have been a lot more clarification on things because as a child, you just start to kind of assume. And then, like you guys said, you fill in the blanks, and sometimes filling in the blanks was like, oh, maybe I'm a problem. And so that communication is super important, and that obviously age appropriate as well, like we've been talking about.
Something that I did, again, I don't know, right, wrong, or indifferent, but you would try to, again, age appropriate, let them know. But I made a promise to both my girls that when they were 18 and they were adults, that then they could ask me any question they wanted about my career. And oh my gosh, I wish I wouldn't have made that promise, right? Both would have been, kind of locked me down. And I don't know if we talked about this when we were on your podcast with Madalena, but I think that was a 6-hour conversation with her. Elena's a little bit less, but yeah. And I think the other part of it that is important, that, along the reassurance, but I also impressed upon my girls that their safety was their responsibility and tried to empower them in that way. And again, age appropriate, but have, particular conversations with them. And we did it quite regularly, actually. But trying to empower them, that there are things that happen. There's things that are uncertain and things can happen. But if they do, your safety is still your responsibility. And there's things that you can do. And we saw the fruits of that bear out in Madalena's shooting that she survived back in 2018. So I think those are things important that we can do as well, just to try to get your kids prepared for this world, right? I mean, it's...
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I think she used that word around personal safety and things like that. And I think that that's great. And, as a parent who's not a first responder, that is something that I want to create for my kiddo too, about, just the importance of your own personal safety. I don't think that my dad necessarily had that language and things, but I definitely think I pay attention a lot because of him. I just pay attention to where I'm gonna park my car or different things like that. And I never really had an experience where I felt like super anxious about things. Like I never felt it in a way of, again, it's like I get to be in control of that, right? And I think that that's something that, to our point when we started earlier, of like, where do you find this line of like, you don't want to take your child's innocence or their joy of being a child and, scare them that everything is scary in this world. And yet that whole thing about wanting to be safe, paying attention, and I think personal safety is just such a great way to encompass that. And there's it's like coloring in the lines a little bit. It's not one extreme or the other. So I think that's a great way and language to look at it.
Mike, I'm curious, how did that differ for you? You had 2 boys.
I have 2 boys, and yeah, I mean, John, AJ, and I, we all have kids about the same age.
Say it's up, but it says...
But yeah, same age. And, you talk about that generational part, and what did you learn from your parents on how do they talk about their job? And certainly there wasn't anything in the academy that I went to that said, hey, just so you know, you're going to get to see a side of society that isn't always going to be pleasant. How do you share that with your family? Because they're coming along in tow, whether they know it or not. And as we reflect on the kids and their involvement in what we do, I think the building up community was super huge. I'm just thinking about even post Platte Canyon, all the things that we did as a team with the families, and bringing them with us to build that trust in our world at work and the people that we work with, and the value of those relationships, and then how we're all going to get through this together, and not, brushing aside the personal impact, the impact on everybody around us. And I think our kids were probably 8, 9 years old, maybe 10, during that time. And it showed joy over the resilience and the memory of the people that were involved that day. And I think, certainly after we have our conversation today, I'll have a moment to have a beer with my boys and go, tell me about your upbringing, because I honestly have never asked them what the impact of my job is. Certainly they have probably a wider view on what's possible in their world. Um, That being said, my youngest moved to Oakland, California, and I'm like John a little bit, like, "What are you doing? Stay closer, right?" But not everybody can have a castle on a mountain with a moat and a bunch of Labradors to protect their well, AJ. So we all gotta get out into the world. I know that, being a Gen Xer, bringing your kids up, and giving them leash to go out and, you know, fall down, pick themselves back up was super important. But with current society saying, "No, we need to wrap them in bubble wrap and protect them at all times," is contrary to that. So I hope my kids enjoyed having that leash and the expectation that they're gonna fall down and pick themselves up.
Ashley and I were just meeting and we were talking, just preparing about different things. And one thing we were talking about is just this idea of the family. And like I said, Ashley is much more embedded in departments and things like that. And John, I appreciate even when you started, like, hey, like the silent, the people that we don't get to hear from as much in first responding worlds are the families. And what do we do for our families and things like that? And, the role of a department isn't necessarily to be in a family. That's not their place and there's boundaries. And Ashley just brought up this great point just about like what do we do as outreach with our families. And I grew up with the, police picnic and the police Christmas party that was very family oriented. And I think that that's a great thing about, community and I wasn't the only kid of of a first responder in my community. There were other children like me, and to you guys' point, like, your kids are around the same age, and, that's important kinda to come together. And I don't Ashley, if you wanna elaborate on that too,
Yeah,
like, we're talking
of
about.
course. Yeah, I you said so many things just now, like, that are resonating with me. The biggest one being I love that you're like, "Hey, I wanna talk to my boys about what it was like for them." Because I feel like through the podcast, that was the first time that I was able to, like, interview my dad and learn from him his perspective because my point of view on things was, like, a little bit vastly different, right? But again, when you're a kid and you're growing up with it, like, I'm very aware of my surroundings. My dad was very much like what we've been talking about. He was very all about that. So I noticed that I was different from like growing up when I'd be with my friends and they would go make a decision, and in my head I'd be like, "What are you doing? Like, that's 101. Like, you don't do that, you know." I was always called the mom of the group. And I do think it was 'cause of my dad, and he's shielding me, like, all these things, right? And about the safety and it being my responsibility and stuff like that, but also the pressure of because I was his daughter, like, I should know those things. And so we were talking about the family portion and stuff, and I do encourage you to have that conversation because it's very interesting. My dad always said he was like there was a lot of fear for him, but fear of like us being hurt and obviously wanting to protect us in the best way. But then there was also fear that drove him because he did not want us to turn out um like people he dealt with, right? And he was very fearful of us girls making wrong choices and doing that. And so, yeah, sorry, I can go off. There were so many things said that are amazing, but for sure the family piece within the departments. I like the family days stuff. I think that's great. I'm currently building a mental health program for a department. That's something we want to bring back, but something that I find even more beneficial I shouldn't say more, it's all equally amazing, but is the educational piece behind it. So I think a lot of the times in the academy and all these things, we preach all this stuff, but there's all this stuff that can happen in these careers that we have no control over. However, when we don't bring the families into it to educate them on those things as well, I think that's a really big disconnect. So, for example, something that I am a really big proponent of is doing family days where it's educational, such as if there is an OIS, if your loved one is in an OIS, what do the steps look like? Because often we don't bring them in on those things, and that's a very scary situation to be in. Right? Maybe you get a phone call from your loved one. I was just in the shooting and now their phone's taken. You don't hear from them for hours. What does that leave that family to think, right? And feel. And then on top of it, we have social media these days. So if something does happen, often that family finds out before they get contacted. And so those expectations of like what can you expect, what will happen, like I do have a strong feeling that families should be tied into that, and departments should hold days like that, just because I think that will alleviate some of those worries. You're obviously not all of them. You're going to get that call and be worried anyway. But the educational piece. So I do think there's room for fun, families, connections, kids to connect, all those things. But then I also think it's very important to have educational parts of that as well.
Well, so many times our cops don't know what's going to happen, let alone educate their family members, right? And certainly a structured, supportive way of getting that information out there, that makes sense, answers questions, and we talk about having an answer to the problem usually brings peace in your world, right? The unknowns can create a big monster that nobody wants to talk about, and it really is a procedure that's going to happen. The good news is, you got that call that, this thing happened, but it's unfortunately part of the job, and let's figure out how we're going to navigate this thing, with some information before we have to jump into the deep end, right?
Exactly. And I love that I have the opportunity to speak through my like clinician side. So I love that I'm able to give some information about the brain, how the brain works, how what happens in these high stress situations, and how we can see our loved one who is that first responder actually respond. What are some symptoms? What are things to look out for? How do we best support them in these times? So that's all about it as well.
Ashley, do you want to speak about when Ashley did like her dissertation, and I think this kind of brings up a point that you were talking about earlier too about officers. Can you just share about your dissertation real quick, Ash?
Yeah, so I was like, oh, look at this giant fire. Let me walk right into it when I did my dissertation. But naturally, being a child of a first responder, I picked the civil unrest events and what it was like for our police, our active law enforcement officers to have to respond to those events. I was in my master's program when Ferguson happened and my dad was still active, and it really left a mark on me. That was the first I grew up in a really small town, so that was the first time that, I actually just felt immense anxiety for my dad in the career that he was in and wanted him to be done with it. And I think I begged him a million times to retire, but so I wrote my dissertation on that, and I found uh, out of 100% of my participants, right, they all brought up their families, and they actually all discussed the way it impacted their families and their children. And honestly, it's probably forever left a mark on me, and it's why I'm continuously researching how do we kind of bridge these gaps and bring families in, because it was very sad, and it was sad to actually learn how much these events impacted like children or first responders, and that whole family dynamic.
When you talk about the impact on kids, first responders, what are some of the signs that you see where kids start to struggle that parents, the first responders, need to pay attention to?
Yeah, so I would say that increase in anxiety, I see that a lot with my children or first responders. But also sometimes you have to remember that when our child is anxious, right, that can also present as irritability. So maybe a little bit of those behavior changes, and if we're not communicating with them and asking them kind of what's going on or if there is something more so, I think that's important to do. I think with children, honestly, a lot of the times we're kind of brutally honest. So if you do ask, you're going to get an answer probably, and that's always a great thing. But I would definitely say increase of anxiety, maybe irritability and behavior changes. Your children kind of the best, hopefully, right? So you're going to be able to pick up on that. But I've also learned that a lot of the times too, and especially through my dissertation, this was eye opening for me. There was a lot of physical symptoms for children of first responders. So starting to have more like illnesses. I had a lot of first responders talk about how their children started to struggle with like, this is a little bit more of an extreme case, but still like started to struggle. Like one of the children started to have seizures because they were having so much anxiety about their parents being involved in the civil unrest, right? So a lot of physical symptoms too, like headaches, just not feeling well, kind of that isolation, detachment, not as social, not as outgoing. Those are all little things you could look for. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a huge list that I could go on forever.
So being in tune with your kid is probably the top thing, right? Noticing that being in tune with yourself and noticing those as well, right? Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I think in parenting, and my approach as a therapist as well is like, whatever we want in our children, which we want the moon for our children, we have to be able to kind of find those things in ourselves. If we want our child to be confident, well, we have to find confidence in ourselves. If we want our kid to not be anxious, well, we have to explore our own kind of feelings. Am I feeling anxious and things like that? The other thing too I see sometimes in those families as well is that um, first responders have high expectations, and that's nobody should lower the bar. I think having high expectations is a great thing, but understanding sometimes that pressure that people can experience and just having some awareness of that, of saying like this is our bar, but effort is important, right? Like we might not clear where we want to clear, but where we're working towards it. Sometimes I see that some perfectionism show up in kiddos of first responder family. You actually didn't have to confess to it. Um, and so, I think that to just explore that, right? Like standards are fine, but exploring like what we really want is the effort more than it has to be done perfectly, right? And sometimes that can get confused, especially in little brains, right? Like us grown-ups know, like, hey, you know, I'm human, I messed up, but kids don't always understand that. So
Jennifer is so good with this. She's so, like, polite and everything, and I've all this is the same on our podcast. She's so, like, even keel, and there's me just so loud and, like, straight to the point. I call those unrealistic expectations, and a lot of our first responders have those, and my dad definitely had them for all of us girls. He'd be like, you're 3 years old, but you better be respectful and know how to be respectful," and I'm like, "No, my brain doesn't even work that way, sir. I don't know what you want me to say." But definitely you're not wrong. It's setting the bar and it should be there, right? He had high standards, and yet sometimes you have to remember that those people around you don't have that same thought process. So yeah, I had to laugh. I'm sorry. She said it so beautifully, and in my head I'm like, "Oh no." Every time. I'm like, "That's an unrealistic expectation."
So other than talking to your kids, what are some strategies that'll work to kind of calm them down? What can you help them do?
well, again, I come from a place too of I hope it's okay to talk about firefighters here, but my my thing that I always talk about with families and individuals as well is that, knock on wood, heaven forbid, this building I'm in catches on fire. But I know what to do because not because I've been in a fire before, because I practice fire drills when there's no fires. So, some of this is like, how are we checking in regularly? What does that look like as, a family? So I think having some of those conversations, doing things when we're not in a panic, you know, just is there a game night? Are there fun things that we're doing to kind of check in as a family? And listen, life is busy. Like I want to spend as much time with my kid as I can, and yet there's a thousand things to do. And so I think sometimes it's just like, how do we prioritize this in a way that really works for us? And that's a very individual thing. Like I don't have some, one size fits all of like this is how you're going to do it for your family. And I might kind of put that back on y'all in terms of how did you guys connect or check in with your families? Like, how did we do that? I know for my dad, we were a big sports family. Like, so I played sports, my brother played sports, like that to and from practice, those are places. And I think sometimes we want to overthink, like, well, I have to have on my calendar, we do this family night at this time. And it's just sometimes just that ability to be present with yourself, to be present with your child. And life will distract us from being present. It's you know, the bills that we gotta get paid, it's the overtime that we're working, it's, I haven't slept in 2 days, it's all those things, and it's just working towards, getting to be at a place where we can be a little more present. I don't know if that answers the question, but
It does, and I would assume that, you know, it's not dissimilar for how you talk to your spouse, right? And having those conversations and understanding the limits of what you should share and shouldn't share, so their anxiety doesn't skyrocket too.
right. I have a funny spouse story that Ashley's heard this story before as well. Sorry, I'm a broken record. But I graduated college with a friend who knew, obviously, grew up as a kid of a cop, and she married a police officer. And she called and was just like, "Oh my goodness, how did your mother do this?" And like, just went on and on about how hard it is. She's like, "We're newlyweds and I don't ever get to see my husband." And it was just so interesting to hear. I mean, here's my dear friend who I was at her wedding. I'm so happy for her. And that it is really hard being married to a police officer. And I had no clue. I'm not married to a police officer, wasn't married to a police officer. And it really gave me a lot of respect for my mom, as well as like, some recognition of like, this is an adjustment for spouses and, something that you're trying to like navigate in this relationship. And it also made me laugh because, you guys have never heard this before, but somebody was complaining about police pulling them over and how dare they give them a speeding ticket. And like my homegirl was ready to fight. Like, how dare you talk? And it was, water off a duck's back to me because I grew up like, yeah, people trash the cops all the time. Like, we know that they're good people. And, it's just interesting that dynamic of like what it's like for me who grew up in this and somebody, a civilian, coming into this first responding world. It is an adjustment for sure. So I appreciate, John bringing up that dynamic with spouses. It's different.
I think maybe we do a little bit of disservice when we talk about the job. Do a lot of talking about how it's a calling, especially to do it for a long time. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily a job, and it can change who you are. Um, I know you guys talk about the detachment from either spouse and family, because the job is a pull and it's very time consuming, and you can find yourself, and they talk. Our clinicians have talked about how you feel when you're at work with the endorphin dump and the excitement and this and that, and it can really be that wedge between you and your family because you're there for the excitement. I love the person I am at work. I don't have as many filters. I can talk to my guys the way, as long as HR isn't listening, and um, I can be a little more, gritty, and but it's fun. And at home, there's responsibilities, and I got to think about what I say and what do I do. And certainly, I don't want to shock the wife, and she's like, "Who did I marry?" So you mask some of that stuff, and you go to where it's fun, and you're running kind of free. So to your point of know who you are and what's going to and develop a family life that's safe and comfortable, and it creates support for when the job isn't so fun, like when they're riding in the streets and nobody seems to appreciate what you do, because your home life is where you're going to have to find that. So you better have it built, you better have it substantiated so that it is a safe place for you to go.
Mike, well said.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like Yoda.
Sometimes it like two things spark in my head and I just start spewing out.
Y'all said he was the funny one.
I know.
Phil's often don't want
he's the funny and prolific one.
even a blind squirrel finds an acorn or
That's why John keeps me around. Sorry about my dog coming in here, you guys. Everybody kind of just this that, and I can't pick him up like AJ did, but
Well, it's like, oh my gosh, look at this massive dog. So awesome.
It's more like a horse than a dog. So
well, my joke is if people end up looking like their dogs, I just bought one that looks like me. He's tall, skinny, and gray.
But at least he doesn't walk with a limp. So
No, he's actually doing pretty good.
all right. Well, hey, I think we're getting close to our time here. Just want to respect that. So just want to thank you guys immensely for coming on, and hopefully our listeners and or viewers grab a hold of a few nuggets there that you guys shared with us. And it's not an exact science. We just got to keep going forward and keep trying. But we all know, right? Our kids are our most precious things to us. And there is a lot of toxicity within this, profession, and just trying to keep them safe from that, but also preparing them for the world and keeping them moving forward. So can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing some of your knowledge with us.
We very much appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate what you guys do. I think the word resiliency was mentioned earlier. I think that you guys do such a great job of like the importance of that, and when you endure hardships, how you move forward, and I think that's incredible.
Yeah, and I would say that there is no parenting. There's no parenting. There's no handbook to parenting, right? So like you said, you're always learning, you're always evolving. But honestly, too, and I'm guilty of this. I'll be the first to work with my dad to talk about the struggles that we had. But it's honestly a blessing and the best thing to grow up as a child of a first responder as well.
Absolutely, would never change it.
Never change it. So thank you guys so much for everything that you do and for having us on.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it.
The
Access to you guys.
I stepped over you, Mike. Say that again,
I
bud.
was gonna say it was amazing to have access to you guys and your the way you see the world, and thank you for starting the conversation, because we just take things for granted, I think, and it's got me a little bit introspective. I'm thinking about those Father of the Year moments where I probably could have done better.
We all could have,
Mike. We all the right.
We're all gonna fall short as parents, that's for sure. But we try, and that's what's most important. And there's nothing like getting a beer with your dad, so your kids are gonna love that anyways. So
Well, it helps that one of his sons works in a microbrewery and makes his own beer. So yeah.
where's that at?
It's in Broomfield, Colorado.
Okay.
It's called Wonderland Brewing. So he's the brewer there. I've got one that's in physical therapy. The other one's a brewer. So I think I'm set up for retirement.
Yeah, you are. Everything's covered there. Always make sure this can work, right? So
Exactly.
For what it's worth, I owe Connor an apology. He got some grain for me for the cows, and I totally dropped the ball, and it just popped in my head that I didn't call him back. So I'll talk to him. So if he says it's on in my mind. So
Good.
So I think before we close out, though, I think there's a couple things we want to talk about, and just join in with us if you want to. But how about USA Hockey?
Hey, that is super cool. An amazing,
Both
both the women's and the men's.
women and men's, boy.
Oh,
What a performance.
are you guys hockey? You mentioned hockey earlier. Are you guys all hockey fans?
Very, very big hockey fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally almost brought that up earlier when we brought up like Canada and stuff. And I'm like, I have to be professional for like an hour a year. I'm a huge sports girl. That's how me and my dad have stayed connected all through. I'm a huge Bears fan. I'm a huge football girl. But I love hockey. Like I love sports. So I literally was jumping at the bits, and I was like, oh, I can't. This isn't this. So I'm actually.
Oh no, it's 100%.
That's awesome.
I don't think any of us can skate, but we love hockey.
Well, I used to play hockey, but that was 40 years ago.
Oh, you played hockey. Oh my goodness.
I grew up in Fargo. We didn't know anything but ice.
Of course. I grew up too far I grew up in Kentucky. We play basketball. That's all we have there. But what's interesting is going further south in Texas, there's quite a bit of hockey in Texas. I'm been shocked by. And of course, I've gotten to see the Stars play and the Dallas Stars and things like that. But I hear you're not an expert at hockey if you can't keep up with the puck. And I don't know that I'm that great at keeping with the puck. So
It's a fast-paced game.
it is. It is for sure. And what did they say the women's goalie, how many goals she stopped? It was something insane. They, I guess, scored 2, and I think she stopped like 99 goals. I mean, it was just, yeah. How did they keep track?
I don't know the stats, but both goalies,
Yeah.
you know,
Insane.
and men's were just absolutely amazing in the
Yeah.
net. Yeah, and I was behind enemy territory all last. Not, I shouldn't say enemy territory. I couldn't get them a lot, but, I enjoy being up there, but yeah, I even mentioned the fact that USA might win, and I thought I was going to get, knocked out.
Glad you're with us today. No,
Well, what a deal! I mean, just what a good thing for the country, and good thing for USA hockey. And there's I think sometimes what happens in this profession, right? We get stuck in just the negativity of life, and we talk about nobody calls 911 when they're having a good day. And so it's really important for those things that are good to just kind of grab a hold of and just let them be good. Just let them be good. And the Olympics for us was a good thing, especially again when we talk about hockey, right? But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. So, and John, we usually go. So John's in Missouri, right? We usually do go to at least one hockey game a year, but John's been dragging his feet. Hopefully, we'll get out there in season. So
Still some season.
I've been slacking.
well, you've been busy.
My new book came out, so
Yeah. Let's hear
Yeah.
our book.
Yeah, so the essential 5, the decisions you make in the first 5 minutes, 5 hours, and 5 days of a crisis will define your next 5 years. So book 2 is coming out. It's a much bigger workbook, complete with tabletop exercises, and that'll be a much bigger deal. But the first one was an incredible, just team effort, and really excited about, talking about how do you manage a crisis? What does success look like? Because we've seen 30 years of too much failure, and we've learned a lot of lessons, and unfortunately through a lot of mistakes, but a lot of good people doing good work, and we wanted to highlight them, and you and Madalena were gracious enough to provide insight. We'll be scheduling interviews for book 2 with Mike and the good Dr. Nicoletti, who's brilliant. If you haven't had him on your podcast, you need to have John Nicoletti on your podcast. He's a police psychologist, and
That AJA spoke highly of him as well. Where does one get your book? I'm excited for those.
Amazon right now, or if you send me an email, I'll just send you a copy. So
no, I'm going to Amazon. You earned that.
you just send me an email and I'll get you a copy. So
Autographed coffee with a nice little note inside.
That's right.
That's what I want.
we got to send you some swag, Centurion's Path swag.
Yeah.
Because you both are on the path of the protector, right? You're protecting those families, those kids, those responders that need the help and the hope. And that's what we are all about. So love the fact that you do this work and protecting that population that is so important.
Super excited to bring this book back to my department as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm thinking.
It's so weird how things come together sometimes unexpectedly. And I'm super pumped to read that and to bring it back.
Well, and the first book was really designed for schools. The second book is really defined for those people just living in the crisis management world. Whether you're a responder, whether you're in the school system, whether you're in business, we see crisis across the spectrum. So.
Really.
So yeah, that's about it. And then I'm hosting a big conference. I've got 400 registrants. So we'll be hosting a statewide conference on threat management. Madeleine is going to come out and keynote with us on that one. So I got a lot going on, but this is my retirement gig. And I lasted a day into retirement, and then I failed and took another job. So, and I get to hang out with these guys. So my life's good.
Gonna say you're just like me, right? I've failed in this retirement, whatever that means.
I failed. You just suck at it.
That's why I won't retire. It's a lot of work.
Right? Exactly.
Isn't that the truth?
Exactly. Well, thank you.
I'm going to throw a quick plug out as well. I'll be in New Orleans early March for the IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police Officer to Safety Wellness Conference. And I sit on the Mass Violence Advisory Initiative Board. And we have finally come out with our mass violence quick reference guide that we're going out to get this up here. That's not what it's known. Oh, it will look a little different, but that will be going to all the chiefs of police to kind of help them again how to manage some of these things when they're kicking off and dealing with some of the aftermath. And my book is pretty much written. I need to get it. Needs to go through a couple reviews, but very excited to finally have that beast getting ready to get published. So we're moving forward with that as well.
But they're doing it all.
You were supposed to go the book route.
Did you use AI to write your book?
No. I think you did. I was going to, but it's like, I'm just gonna have to push through this dang thing.
Right. Powered through.
But everyone has asked me, they want me to write a novel, and I'm not a novel writer, right? I mean, novel writers kind of have their chest puffed out, and this guy was cool, that guy was an ass, blah blah blah. So my book is on a decision-making matrix that I created way back in 2007 called PI. That's kind of used across the country in the tactical realm, and some agencies use it as an operational philosophy. And it's more of a workbook as well. Kind of goes over the principles, but then things to consider. So yeah. So maybe not by the time we do our next podcast, but maybe by the one after that, we'll be able to have a copy of that as well. So
Excellent.
exciting things.
Dedicated to
I am a podcast listener, not a book writer or reader. So thank you for thinking of me when you decided to get your message out there.
I'm feeling pressure now that we have to write a book. I know.
No, I would say don't write a book. It's
Okay,
a pretty.
good.
Yeah.
I feel like I wrote mine. It was called The Dissertation, and I'm good.
There you go.
Right?
So
Yeah.
There you go.
Strongly worded email, and that's about as deep as I'm gonna get.
Check spelling and punctuation twice, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, with that, I think it's time to call it a wrap. We're right at that hour point, I think. And we always close our podcasts out a very specific way. And I don't know if either of you have a glass. It doesn't have to be with any alcohol in it, but a glass you buy that you can grab. But we close out on a toast. And I've got coffee, right? So we highlighting my good buddies from Vancouver, ERT, giving them a shout out. But this toast goes back all the way to the Roman legions, and it's been translated 1,000 different ways. But and we've changed it just a little bit. But we'll close out with our toast, and so we'll raise a glass here to us and those like us, the centurions. Damn few left. So.
Still we hold the line through the darkest day, hoping our strength means they never fight. And if that day comes, we won't be afraid, because we swore to protect